Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today is Nashville Vice Mayor Jim Shulman. Vice Mayor Shulman, the mayor, in apparently some remarks this week, indicated he'd like to expand what's going on in the East Bank, and there's a lot going on in the East Bank, to perhaps make it the new home of the Tennessee Performing Arts Center. They're looking for a new location because the state's going to repurpose that building, perhaps have developers redo it in some ways. They're going to be looking for a new home and bringing it over there. What are your thoughts about that? And may also apparently require, in some ways, acquiring the Phillips Metals property, which a lot of people have been thinking that's a great idea. But putting all those things together, all the other stuff going on, we're talking about big dollars here that at this point are not really funded at this point.
These are major things. I mean, there's so much stuff that's being thrown around at the same time. It's almost like you want to wrestle it to the ground and make sure you've got it. So this is a whole nother thing that may be added to the picture of what's going on in the East Bank. Again, if the council is going to have to vote on this, which they will eventually, depending on actually what happens, we need to know. Council needs to know, and we need to have enough time to be able to figure out exactly what all the details are and what the financial obligations are to the city, so we can make a good decision and vote.
I should say the council's already done a good bit of planning, at least in terms of doing planning money to do some infrastructure improvements over on the East Bank, and I think it's fair to say that the changes are going to be in that part of town, not just right across the river, but all up and down the East Bank, are going to be stunning.
Well, I know some things are, already being in the works. You're talking about a major boulevard on the East Bank. You have to figure out what's going on with the Titan Stadium and possible development over there. This whole this acquisition that the mayor is talking about of the metal facility, you're talking about a whole nother aspect, a major aspect to, and I know people have been talking about this for years. I don't know how far along it is.
But
I guess we're going to have to find out.
Now it's the details.
Now it's the details.
Also, the council has to deal with the human aspect of it. We've had some rezoning proposals come through that people have been feeling like they're being pushed out, shoved out the door by people who want to retake the property and do something else with it. These are not necessarily the people that are going to develop the property, the people who currently own it. It's difficult for the council. They see all these glitzy, wonderful plans, and they're great things, but there's a human side to this. You have to make sure that you're not pushing out the people that already live there.
All right, so the biggest issue in this city, from what I can understand, just listening to people, is affordability and affordable housing. And what we have to do is to make sure that while we're talking about all the glitzy things, that we remember what's really important to people in Nashville. I've heard people on both sides in terms of just talking about the stadium. It's like, yes, we need a stadium, or no, we don't. But again, we cannot forget the quality of life aspects of this city. It's more expensive to live here, and there is a tremendous need. We were talking about homelessness before, but affordability, affordable homes, that's a major piece of what we need to be looking at, and we've been looking at it, but we're still behind on that.
The mayor this week, also in recent weeks, has questioned first whether Nashville needs to have the party buses continuing downtown. He's also raising questions about whether we continue to have sidewalk merchants all up and down the streets in the downtown area. These are probably things that are going to come to the council too. What's your thought about that? Is it more regulation on those things, or do they need to be banned? Look, we're a tourist destination. I know people don't necessarily like, Nashvilleians don't necessarily like all the party buses downtown, the pedal taverns, and everybody screaming and things like that. I think you have to kind of weigh it. You may need more regulation. It's obviously what attracts people here. I don't ride those things, Pat. I don't think you do either, but apparently it's a big draw for a lot of people, and we need to weigh that in terms of what that does for our tourism. So maybe more regulation. How often are you told by longtime residents that they don't go downtown anymore because of the party buses, because of the scooters, because of the sidewalk merchants? Have we developed a split personality? We like all the things, the notoriety that being a tourist and convention mecca does.
We've been split for a long time, but you've got like old Nashville and new Nashville, and so much development, and people, older Nashville, saying we don't go downtown anymore because we don't want to fight the traffic. It's like we have to figure out what we're going to be when we grow up, and how are we planning for this? And so, I appreciate the mayor stepping in and talking about these things. We need almost like a bigger plan of where we're going to go. What are we going to look like in 10 years?
Next week on Tuesday, June 28th, will be the 60th anniversary of Metro government being approved by the voters of Davidson County and the voters of Nashville back in 1962. 60 years later, still a good decision?
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, really good decision in terms of metropolitan government and the way we do it, because we don't have to have the county and the city fighting, and we don't have to fight over who's doing what and so forth. So great decision, but you know, 60 years ago, I don't know if anybody would have thought that this is what Nashville would have looked like, and we have to be prepared currently and in the future about what we're going to do.
This time next year, believe it or not, Metro will be in the middle of their election cycle. We'll be electing a mayor, a vice mayor, and all 40 members of the council. When you were on the show a couple of months ago, I asked you about running for re-election. You said you were going to talk to your family. You weren't quite sure exactly what you're going to do. Have you had that conversation? Are you running next year?
I've had the conversation with my wife and my kids. They're still split. So I gave myself until August to finally make a decision. You know, the first 3 years, this time has flown, and it usually does. I just have to look at it with them, and I'm going to make a decision by August, and then I'll come back and tell you what it is.
Okay. I won't ask you who's for it and who's against it. But,
it's split right now, so we'll see.
Mr. Vice Mayor, thank you so much for coming on the program. Thank you for the opportunity to tell us what you think about these things. Because you run the meetings pretty even-handedly, but obviously you have thoughts about it.
I try to keep I don't try to give an expression of where I am on the things, because they're voting. The council's voting, and I need to know.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Sure thing.
And thank you for joining us on Inside Politics. Hope you're back here again for a future show. If you can't get enough politics in the meantime, you can go to the website. You'll find my Capital U commentary there. There's a new commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you here next time. Goodbye.